Howdy everybody, and welcome to White Bear Lake, home to the Pine Tree Apple Tennis Classic. Alongside Luke Howitt, I'm Jeb Brand, glad to have you with us. It's that time of the year again, Luke, where the Pine Tree Apple Tennis Classic lures hundreds of people here to Lifetime Fitness. This year, 112 of the area's top men and women tennis players gathered here at Lifetime Fitness for one of the premier mixed doubles charity tennis tournaments in the nation. It was a rainy year for this four-day tournament. The first day, match plays were moved indoors, but that didn't stop people from pouring in. But now here we are again on Sunday for Championship Sunday, trying to hold off the rain.
We absolutely are, Jeb, but this tournament does more than just host great tennis. The last 3 decades, Pine Tree has raised over $4.5 million for children's hospitals and clinics of Minnesota. All those funds raised go to support research to lessen the suffering caused by childhood cancer. Let's take a look at what it's all about.
Thousands of kids are diagnosed with cancer each year, and Pine Tree has been a major fundraiser in cancer research here in Minnesota. This year, Pine Tree set a goal to raise $300,000, and they surpassed that this year. But 30 years ago, raising $300,000 would have sounded crazy. Like any major event, like this one, Pine Tree had to start somewhere.
That's absolutely right, Jeb, and this year we had the chance to sit down with a few people that had the idea to host a charity tennis tournament in White Bear Lake. Here's how it all started.
Back 30 years when it was founded by the Peterson family, they had just gone through a treatment with their daughter Julie.
I can remember When we heard the diagnosis of Julie, and Jack Priest said, "You've been dealt a really bad deck of cards."
I was over listening to a nurse that was in the room with Julie, and she kissed her goodnight.
Yeah.
And, and said, "We'll take good care of you."
At the time, they had asked their oncologist, Dr. Jack Priest. They asked him, we're on the other side of our daughter's treatment and diagnosis. We want to repay you. What can we do? What do you need? And his response was essentially time. And time for Dr. Priest is money, and it's resource, and it takes just a ridiculous amount of orchestration to allow him to go into a lab setting, and he has a hunch, right? And he wants to be able to test it out, but he can't just waltz in on a Tuesday and do that.
We really thought about the nurses, the care, all that. They were like the parents when we couldn't be there. And then after she was done, we wanted to do something, so it could be cured.
One of our neighbors, Ron Peterson, and his wife Mary Ann, their daughter was diagnosed at Children's, and as parents always do, they want to do something, they feel helpless, they want to do something to fight this horrible disease, and they came up with an idea of having a mixed doubles tennis tournament.
And he had a bunch of friends and acquaintances who were willing to go with this.
Through a mutual friend, they came to our farm and asked if we would help with seed money and direction with logistics on how to get the tournament off the ground.
It was a cold, rainy November day right after a busy apple season. I can still remember when they came. They had a little meeting of the minds in the office. It was like, what's going on up there? And I always give my sister Barb, the oldest out of the 6 kids that we have in our family, as the credit to saying, I really think that we should do this. She kind of presented what they wanted, and she said she had felt the magic, maybe, let's say, and so we did it.
The first 9 years of the tournament were held at Delwood Hills Country Club, and they have basically 4 tennis courts and not a lot of other logistical structures or anything for a tournament. So it was kind of like carving a tournament out of the wilderness, and it had a real distinct neighborhood feel. Out of the parking lot, the tents would rise, and the buzz would get going, and voila, you've got a tournament. And it was just extremely special, and it was like the carnival coming to town. It was quite fun getting it all set up and running, and then takedown was even funner.
And lo and behold, in that first year, as I recall, about $17,000 was raised. And then in the second year, something like $30,000. And then in the third year, something like $45,000. And it just kept growing. Over 30 years of Pine Tree, about $4.5 or $5 million has been dedicated to children's cancer research activities at St. Paul Children's, and then the merged Minneapolis and St. Paul Children's.
I've never seen such a group of dedicated people and people who are so helpful and like to spend their time taking care of and helping children with cancer.
Yes, you have the doctors doing the research and the clinic, you have the patients, but you have a beautiful community of people surrounding that really help make this research happen.
And doing it completely from the being a generous group of people, not from any other interest. They just want to help people, and they just want to have children, and they just want to have our group.
got to be the friendships that we've made, getting to know, the players and all the different volunteers, just lifelong friendships that we've had.
Patients and their families, and just it's been so rewarding because of such the work that has been accomplished, and the strides that have been made to fight children's cancer have been just crazy good, and quite humbling to be part of that.
There's just so many stories of kids that would benefit and are benefiting from continued funding out of this cause.
I just love working with these families. I think, it seems like it should be such a cliche that kids with cancer are the most inspiring kids you've ever met, but the truth is that they really are. That when you watch how kids are still kids despite all that they go through, it just gives you a very beautiful view of the world and of the people in it. The way that you get to see parents love their kids, their fierce love for their kids, and the ways communities come together to support kids with cancer. It's a really beautiful thing, and I feel very blessed to witness it each day.
Since 1986, Pine Tree has grown to be quite the operation, and the tournament takes many people to function smoothly. Each year there are tournament co-chairs, there's an advisory board, about 20 committees, tennis players, fans, sponsors, patients' families, doctors, and many more.
That's quite a few, Jeb, and every year an important group of people shows up to do their part in making the tournament run as smoothly as possible. That group I'm talking about, the volunteers. We spoke with some volunteers this year to see what makes them so willing to donate their time at the Pine Tree.
We're here with Mary Ann, a volunteer at the Pine Tree Tennis Classic this year. So Mary Ann, how many years have you volunteered at the Pine Tree Apple Classic?
I have been here for 9 years volunteering.
That is awesome. We so much appreciate all your help.
Thank
what
you.
tasks have you done over the year as a volunteer here?
I pretty much run the food tent with my husband and another couple.
Okay. Is there any specific jobs that you have running the food tent?
I pretty much run the cash register through the event and do whatever else they ask me to do.
Sure. Pour beer, flip burgers, whatever it takes, right?
Yep.
What keeps you coming back each year after year, to donate your time and volunteer at this great event?
Well, I'm a cancer survivor 3 times, and that's how I got involved, and it's for an awesome cause.
Absolutely. How long have you been cancer-free now?
Almost 7 years.
That is great. So awesome to hear. Well, we very much appreciate all of your time that you donate to the tournament each and every year, and everything that you do for the Pine Tree Apple Classic. I'm here with Jerry, Mary Ann's husband. Jerry, how long have you been a volunteer here at the Pine Tree Apple?
This is my 9th year doing it.
9th year as
Yep.
well. So you and Mary Ann married. Do you guys have any kids?
We do. We have 4 kids, 2 daughters and 2 sons, and 3 grandchildren.
Oh, wow. Okay, large family. What are the ages of the kids?
37, 32, 28, and 26.
Awesome.
Grandkids are 16, 13, and 2 weeks.
Oh, you've got a wide range of ages there.
They're all over, yes.
Keeping
Keep
you
us busy,
at all
yeah.
times. Any of the family come out and help you and Mary Ann? Okay.
My oldest son was out yesterday, and he helped grill for me for about 2 or 3 hours. My middle granddaughter was here for the last 4 days. She just left. Her and her friend worked all weekend with us.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
We so much appreciate all the time.
Thank you.
You guys giving back and volunteering.
Thanks.
Here, as you're doing your volunteer, what are some of the tasks that you do around?
I run the food tent with my wife. My specific task is running the grill. I am the grill master, so I cook everything on the grill. I make sure everything's up to par. I taste it, make sure all the flavor's right, so nobody gets sick, and kind of keep everything else going and help wherever else we can help, whatever else tasks need to be done.
Absolutely, and as someone who's tried some of that fantastic food, you're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Each year, obviously, you guys have been here 9 years. What keeps you guys coming back year after year?
My wife being a cancer survivor, it was tough to see my wife go through what she went through, but then to see these little kids going through it, it's kind of why we got involved, and our neighbors got us involved, and it's just a way for us to give back.
It so awesome, and like I said, we very much appreciate
Thank you.
all of that you guys have done
Thanks.
over the last 9 years and years to come, I'm guessing.
A few more to go, I believe, yes.
Our goal was to reach 300,000, and it sounds like we surpassed that at close to
That'll be
310.
awesome. That'll be awesome.
You know,
So,
once again, thanks so much for your time. Volunteers are a crucial part to making this fundraiser a success. But after the tournament is all done for the year, there are still people doing work associated with Pine Tree. And those people are the doctors at children's hospitals and clinics of Minnesota.
And that's right, Jeb, and with over $4.5 million dedicated to cancer research through Pine Tree funds, a lot of progress has been made. Now, one specific area that Pine Tree funds have been focused is pleuropulmonary blastoma, or PPB, a cancer found in infants and children that causes tumors to form in the lungs.
Tricia Anderson, one of the children's first PPB patients, sat down with us to speak about how PPB was first discovered.
I was originally diagnosed with another type of cancer when I was 2 and went through 2 years of chemotherapy. And when I was in remission, a year or 2 later, my brother got sick. And they took the tumors out of him, and the pathologist, Dr. Pepper Daner, had recognized the pathology from another slide, and it just happened to be mine. So he linked the two and named it pleuropulmonary blastoma.
When they compiled those cases, they realized it was more than just the original brother and sister. It was actually a familial disease.
So when you suspect that a cancer may have an underlying or hereditary cause, the way you find the gene is to involve large families in your research. Large families in whom some people have the cancer or the problem that you're trying to understand, and some people don't. And you draw blood from as many of those people as are willing to contribute to this research.
We went down to a church basement in Mankato and collected blood samples on 100 members of this family. And that was a key, absolutely key piece of evidence for determining the gene mutation that was responsible for this disease.
And the gene is called Dicer1. It's a really critical gene. It helps humans form. It regulates how all our proteins are expressed in our body. So when that gene isn't working correctly, cancers can form.
And we looked against the human genome, and it caused a stop codon. What that meant was, as the gene was giving its sequence out, instead of one letter got switched, instead of making the full protein, the one letter that switched created a stop sign. I wasn't a geneticist, but I knew that a stop sign in the middle of a protein, probably not a good idea. We had our first mutation in Dicer.
So there was a day that she called Jack and me, Jack Priest and myself, and she says, I got the gene, okay? And she said Dicer1, and at that point Jack and I didn't really realize how important Dicer1 was. And she was sitting on the phone and she told us, you know, the first primers and the first patients and the first gene was Dicer1, and I got it. And that was just all of a sudden an amazing feeling, like we're gonna now open a whole flood of phenomenal critical research in cancer.
So now's a really exciting time in the research related to Dicer1 tumors. We have the cells growing in the lab, and we've learned a lot about what makes those cells stop growing in the lab. So now we're ready to take the next steps to try to understand more about that process so we can figure out how to make those cells stop growing in kids in a very targeted and hopefully less toxic way. One of the things people also realized very early on is that this tumor wasn't just related to other cases of pleuropulmonary blastoma, but was related to a lot of different forms of cancer. And so people use that knowledge to try to understand more about what actually causes pleuropulmonary blastoma and these other related rare cancers. We tested women with ovarian tumors for this change in the Dicer1 gene. And when we found it, we offered testing for their children. In 2014, we met a family in which we were able to pick up their son's PPB in its earliest and most curable stage, when it can be removed just with surgery alone, without the need for chemotherapy, without the need for radiation. And that's a huge advance in the treatment of these tumors that we're very excited about. That would not have happened without Pine Tree. One of the stories I'll remember is being on my way home from Yellowstone, and we just came into cell phone range, and I got this notice that there was a tumor sample, one that we really needed in order to try to grow these cells in the lab and try to figure out how to treat them. And we almost weren't able to receive that specimen from the place where the surgery was being performed.
And it was, something as simple as paying for the packaging, like the dry ice and all of the logistics.
And Pine Tree steps in little moments like that, which are actually really big moments if you think about how important tissue samples are to this research, or in larger funding efforts. Pine Tree has really come together to step in to make research work in an ongoing way. So to me, it's a beautiful example of how everybody works together to help kids and families affected by childhood cancer.
And the folks that have worked so hard to raise the money just kind of, they turn it over to, the caretaking of this medical team and say, you guys know best. You go ahead and pay for the FedEx packages that you think are relevant. And I just think that in and of itself is revolutionary, and to me is the reason Pine Tree's been so impactful, is because they're truly putting the money in the hands of people that know.
And I hope that they'll do it for the next 60 years, really.
But I think the beautiful cycle of Pine Tree is that we started with a charitable event in honor of a little girl with leukemia. And that charitable event helped fund rare tumor research focused on infants and children with a rare but very aggressive lung cancer called PPB. And through that research about those very young kids affected by PPB, we learned that PPB is related to a whole bunch of other kinds of childhood and adult cancers linked by a gene called DICER1. So now the next part of the story is that we use what we understand about this gene called DICER1 to find kids with PPB as early as possible when their tumors are in their earliest and most curable form. And so we use the research that originally was funded from Pine Tree and has been continuously funded by Pine Tree, made possible by those kids with PPB, to come full circle and help us cure PPB. It's a beautiful thing and a great team effort.
When I was 27, I gave birth to my son, and he's healthy. And then in 2011, my daughter was born. And they both have the DICER1 gene, but because of the research and the funding from the Pine Tree Apple Tennis Classic, we were able to know that they had the gene, know what we needed to do for early screening, and we went through the screening process with Dr. Yoav, and they are healthy and still remain cancer-free.
Thank you, Pine Tree. Because of you, all this was possible, and so much more to come.
Well, unfortunately, Jeb, the weather yet again this afternoon has not cooperated. We've had some rain showers over the past hour, and the rest of the tournament will be decided indoors today.
Looks like we will have a champion today, but crowned indoors. So it truly is an amazing story to hear how PPB was originally discovered in Tricia Anderson. And since then, they have found the DICER1 and are using knowledge to the DICER gene to make sure Tricia's own kids are healthy today.
Yeah, it really is an amazing story, Jeb. And while there are many people who have participated in the Pine Tree over the past 30 years in a variety of ways, one group of people we haven't talked about yet is the tennis player themselves. I had a chance to take a few minutes to sit down with Chris Combs, who's been a longtime tennis pro here, and I just asked him what makes this Pine Tree Classic so very special to him.
I've had the good fortune to be in all 30 years of the tournament. I've played in it so long that now my oldest boy is now playing in the main draw while I'm in the Masters division.
Very good. And how did you originally get started to play in this classic tennis tournament, Chris?
My then boss made me play the first year, and after that I kept playing because I loved it so much.
Very good. Now what makes you come back, obviously, year after year? You've done a lot of different work. Have you ever won the tournament here, Chris?
Yes, for me it's a social event. Sometimes I only get to see my friends once a year at this tournament, so we all get together, and it's also such a great event. The fundraising and the cause we play for is so wonderful, and I did have the good fortune to win this event in the main draw a very long time ago.
Very good. Now I understand you all set goals of a minimum of $500 for donating to this obviously great event. Now I understand you raised over $14,000 this year. How accomplished did you feel there, and how does that feel being able to donate that kind of money to such a great event?
It's a wonderful feeling. We all try and compete with each other to see who can raise the most, and we start off with a minimum of $500 to get in the tournament, and after that you just go as hard as you can and try and raise as much money for the great cause.
All right, very well, Chris. Well, I appreciate the time. Good luck in the future, and congrats on your prior win. and we appreciate all that you do for this great event.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Well, some of you might be wondering who the winners of this year's tournament are. In the open division, which is open to all ages, Imke Reimers and Matthew Froment were today's champions. And in the Masters division, which consists of men age 40 and over and women age 35 and over, a congratulations to Tori Borowski and Gordon Reed. And finally, in the Grand Masters division, which is men 50 and over and women age 40 and over, a congratulations to Felicia Rasciatori and Mike Olson.
And before we leave, we'd like to leave you with some information on where you can donate to this very special cause. At any time, you can go to PTATC.org. Once you're there, click on the tennis tab at the top of the page and select Fundraise from the drop-down menu. There will be a Donate Now button about halfway down the page.
With all that money raised, I think we can call this year's tournament a huge success. Well, that's all we have for you here from the Pine Tree Apple Tennis Classic. Thanks again for sticking with us. From Luke Howitt, I'm Jeb Brand. We'll see you next year.